Poe Bronson and Arvind Gupta, Decoding the World, a roadmap for the questioner. Narrated by Thomas Florio and Amanda Marr.
COVID-19, cancer, melting glaciers, the incredible rise of China, artificial intelligence, genetic manipulation. Nobody knows what the future holds, but we do know some of the things that will shape it. Arvind Gupta and Poe Bronson, the two friends at the helm of the biotech venture capital firm IndieBio, have devoted themselves to making positive change. In these blinks, you'll discover just a few of the ways they're trying to influence the world for the better.
Blink 1 of 8.
It's March 2020, and the first person has died from COVID-19 in the United States. Poe Bronson and Arvind Gupta have their work cut out for them. In normal times, the companies they work with at IndieBio, a Silicon Valley-based biotechnology startup accelerator, would be tackling everything from curing cancer to creating the perfect blue. But suddenly, everyone has a common goal and different ideas about how to achieve it. Llama antibodies, anyone? What about niclosamide? It's usually used for birth control, but had some effect against SARS, so might be worth a shot. How about 3D printing lymph nodes that can make antibodies? At such a time of crisis, IndieBio's unique style and out-of-the-box big-picture thinking might be exactly what the world needs. In that sense, it's business as usual.
Here's the key message. Since before the COVID-19 pandemic, IndieBio has been trying to save the world.
Amid a sea of funding applications from prospective companies, Arvind manages to take a step back. How did this all begin? Everyone's saying the virus came from bats. Quite possible, bats are home to loads of viruses. But here's the thing. The bat genome protects bats against viruses extremely well, so most of the time they don't get sick. And if they do happen to get sick, they don't usually pass their viruses on to humans. That only changes when bats are stressed or under threat, like from loss of habitat, deforestation, destruction of wetlands, things like that. In other words, when their existence is being jeopardized by human interference. IndieBio starts rapidly approving all sorts of new ventures that stand a slim chance of helping the world through the pandemic. It's the name of the game. After all, taking risks is IndieBio's purpose. Poe read an impressive study a while back from the University of Michigan. It didn't use genetic engineering, machine learning, or any other methods favored by IndieBio, just an old-fashioned questionnaire. But it proved, comprehensively, that people aged 50 and above were most likely to stay healthy if they had a sense of purpose. Simple as that. Working from home, Arvind sighs. His sense of purpose is leading him away from IndieBio, the company he founded. He's leaving it in the safe hands of Poe, his good friend. He'll miss it. But maybe he can do more good at a bigger venture capital firm, invest even more money into world-changing causes. Now would be the time.
Blink 2 of 8.
Since its founding in 2014, IndieBio has been a breath of fresh air in San Francisco. Profoundly unlike any other venture capital firm, it has backed wildly disruptive projects. It pioneered lab-grown meat. It worked out how to save the bees. It flooded the rhino horn market with 3D printed ones in an attempt to stop illegal trade. Poe, whose background was in journalism, was fascinated long before he got involved. Silicon Valley was getting boring, he thought. It was dominated by Facebook executives lamenting the site's dependency on ads. IndieBio was the cool kid on the block.
The key message is, Arvind Gupta founded IndieBio to shake things up in San Francisco.
In his mid-20s, Arvind quit a high-flying job and took up base jumping, an incredibly dangerous hobby. He jumped off tall buildings more than 260 times, facing death every time before making that vital decision to pull the parachute cord. It taught him how to appreciate the value of life. Later, working in tech, he lived in Shanghai and was stunned by the astonishing pace of China's development. Just a few hours from Shanghai is Yiwu, the city known as the world's supermarket. Built in 1982, it's 150 times bigger than America's biggest mall and is home to 75,000 stores and enormous factories. Look around you. Any cheap disposable goods you see were probably made right there. To Poe, it seems that China holds the future in its hands. When he thinks about the future, he imagines a 5-sided game of chess. 4 sides represent the climate, artificial intelligence, genetics, and the war on truth. The 5th side? China. But here's the catch. China is also controlling the other players. Its AI program and its media are nationalized. And it produces twice as many polluting greenhouse gases as the US. China's also exporting more than just goods to countries like Uganda and Chile. While the US is trying to export phones and cars and jeans to these places, China is exporting entire cities. Its global influence now exists at an almost unimaginable scale. Once back in the US, Arvind founded IndieBio as a way to influence the world for the better. But how much influence can one relatively small venture capital fund have compared to a global powerhouse like China? The answer may be more than you think.
Blink 3 of 8.
While the underlying cause of bee colony collapse is still a mystery, it's now a mystery with a solution, thanks to the IndieBio-funded company BeeFlow. BeeFlow guessed that something had changed in the bees' diet. For whatever reason, they were no longer getting enough of some natural substance. So BeeFlow made a cocktail of plant hormones and amino acids, and they added it to the bees' honey. It worked. The bees got healthier. The plants they visited did better, too. Problem solved? Sadly, it turns out that beekeepers were surprisingly uninterested. Progress has been slow because many don't want to change their approach. Poe and Arvind describe the problem as inertia, and it isn't just the bees that are suffering.
Here's the key message. If we're going to save the planet, we need to overcome our state of inertia.
In his first law of motion, Isaac Newton states that any object moving at a constant speed will keep moving at that speed unless it's acted on by an outside force. Once something's in motion, it won't stop or change course of its own accord. Arvind and Poe use the term a bit differently, however. For example, burning coal is incredibly bad for the environment, and renewable alternatives are available. Yet, coal consumption has actually grown since 2000. Coal isn't even very profitable. Nearly half of the world's coal power plants run at a loss. They only keep going to pay off their debt. In other words, only inaction keeps them going. And it's not just big companies that are disappointingly inactive. It's people, too. In all fairness, people are told a dizzying array of things about the future, especially by Silicon Valley. Stuff like, we're going to populate Mars. Robots will soon take over. We'll 3D print human organs and live forever. With all of that to worry about, the climate crisis doesn't sound so critical. But what's needed is a huge attitude shift. Think about how 9/11 changed the way we thought about terrorism, or how COVID-19 is changing how we think about viruses. It seems like it'll take something momentous to trigger a change in how we think about the climate. But if even Hurricane Katrina didn't manage, what will? It's a scary thought. Arvind's family lives in Iceland, where the glaciers are visibly melting away. The Prime Minister erected a tombstone when one melted so much that it could no longer be considered a glacier. Addressing the people of the future, it reads, "We know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you know if we did it."
Blink 4 of 8.
People tend to react strongly when they learn about new ideas, especially in fields like genetics. Poe and Arvind call it warp speed impulse, our tendency to immediately envisage a world where current trends are pushed to their worst extremes. The bees are dying? Imagine a world with no bees at all. AIs improving? Imagine robots enslaving humanity. We've learned how to edit the genome? Imagine designer babies and evil scientists unleashing deadly diseases. The not-so-interesting truth is that genome editing is very tightly regulated. It would be enormously difficult to do anything dangerous or dystopian with this technology. And meanwhile, as the COVID crisis has clearly proved, genetics in nature are constantly evolving on their own, with the potential to do humans enormous amounts of harm.
The key message here is genome editing can help us fight the dangers of nature.
Dimitri, a geneticist at IndieBio, is describing his current project using CRISPR technology to Poe. By combining a blood sample with some extra genetic elements, he says, he can create cells that make IL-10, a substance that helps the body accept a newly transplanted kidney. The body already makes IL-10 naturally, just not enough. This isn't creating designer humans. Dimitri's treatment wouldn't affect the body's genome permanently. It's a one-time solution for people with kidney transplants. The whole process of genetics is far more nuanced than we imagine, and the human genome itself isn't really the most important part. The notion that we are our genome is simplistic. Really, it's all about gene expression. Think of the genome as a library. Scanning the catalog won't tell you what books are popular. For that, you need to know what books get checked out. Plus, some popular books won't be in the library at all. Similarly, only a fraction of the human genome actually gets expressed. We also contain genetic material that isn't part of our genome at all. The DNA of trillions of bacteria and viruses, for instance, as well as mysterious but influential small RNA chains. Crazily, some of our small RNA chains come directly from the food we eat. We literally contain the genetic coding of mushrooms or meat or whatever else we consume. We've only scratched the surface of genetics. The forces of nature remain enigmatic and powerful. But, as we'll discover in a moment, we're gradually learning how we can use genetics to improve human health.
Blink 5 of 8.
For Arvind, like millions of others, the fight against cancer is personal. His mother was diagnosed with uterine cancer years ago. She's had treatments and made good progress, but cancerous cells are still there. During one round of surgery, Arvind made an unusual request. He asked the doctor to send his mother's tumor to the lab at IndieBio. We've long known that cancer is caused by mutations, but these days, genetic scientists are able to look inside the DNA and identify which mutations have occurred. Arvind found 9 mutations in his mom's tumor, enough information to know that she'd need to continue with treatment. IndieBio has funded many cancer-fighting companies, each with its own novel approach. They haven't solved the problem yet, but with the strides that modern science is making, they're getting there.
This is the key message. Advances in genetics may transform our understanding of the human body.
There's much about our bodies that we still don't understand. Even, for example, a process as fundamental as breathing. Arvind spent some time with the Iceman Wim Hof, who, through his extreme breathing techniques, can run marathons in sub-zero temperatures wearing only a pair of shorts. We still aren't clear on the science behind this. We're continually learning more about the brain, too, including the mysterious process of memory. People tend to imagine memory as an electrical circuit, but that's not quite right. There's also a genetic element. Memories are encoded into RNA molecules and then move around the cell. In 2020, scientists at UCLA actually succeeded in transferring a sequence of RNA memory from one snail to another. They literally moved the memory. Fish, it turns out, actually do this between generations. They transmit memories to their children so their offspring inherit learned knowledge. Elsewhere, scientific work is being done to try and extend the human lifespan. And again, genetics is key. One IndieBio company, MitoNova, has created a drug that is remarkably effective at anti-aging. The magic ingredient? Mother's milk. It turns out that some compounds in mother's milk act on the thousands of tiny mitochondria in each of our cells. It prevents them from leaking and encourages fresh mitochondrial growth, making the body more energy efficient. Consuming the compounds can thus help older people stay active and fit. What else is modern science teaching us? For one thing, we're learning all about bacteria, as you'll discover in the next blink.
Blink 6 of 8.
The things bacteria can do are unbelievable. Among the trillions of species that exist, there are bacteria that can, or can be programmed to, convert almost anything into pretty much anything else. We're talking bacteria that make electricity, or metals, or bioplastics. Bacteria that could eat carbon dioxide, or turn food waste into hydrogen fuel. This might sound like the stuff of alchemy, but when you zoom into the microscopic level, it makes a lot of sense.
The key message is, just a handful of elements make up almost everything on the planet.
Carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen make up 97% of human bodies. The full 100% consists of just 25 elements in total. Our environments have a similar makeup. All bacteria are doing, really, is shifting elements around into different configurations. That's a perspective that can lead to radical thinking, and not just regarding bacteria. Tom Chi, founder of Google's experimental wing Google X, described climate change to Poe and Arvind as a mass transfer problem. Put simply, the carbon in the atmosphere needs to be transferred into the Earth's soil. The task is huge, but it can be done, he said, by planting billions upon billions of trees and increasing carbon in the soil from 1 or 2% to at least 8%. Hearing Chi's ideas inspired Arvind to double down on his own plan. His aim is to turbocharge the process by which CO2 can be captured and turned into rock using the mineral olivine. It's useful to think about everything around us as different configurations of the same basic elements. But something else is going on too. Energy dispersal. According to the second law of thermodynamics, any system gradually disperses its energy over time. This is known as entropy. Compare a rock to a human. The human is a lot better at dispersing the energy it contains. The forms that have developed on Earth, from rocks to bacteria, plants, animals, and humans, have gotten progressively better at energy distribution. We're all obeying the law of entropy. Think of it as evolution, but stretching back before life itself. The pattern all along has been improving methods of energy dispersal.
Blink 7 of 8.
While it's fascinating to speculate about possibilities, a lot of work at IndieBio is about tackling complex philosophical questions and making something real happen as a result. For example, what is the perfect blue? You won't hear a lot of venture capitalists discussing that, but it's not purely about the shade. Back in the Middle Ages, blue was hard to obtain, so it became a symbol of luxury. Later, imperialist indigo farmers ruthlessly exploited workers to obtain the dye. These days, the artificial indigo used in jeans is made with dangerous chemicals, including cyanide. Blue food dyes are synthetic too. A perfect blue, then, could play a part in transforming society. That's why IndieBio funded Tinctorum, a company that aims to create positive societal change through its naturally made blue dye.
The key message here is scientific innovation can help us build a better society.
Here's another one. What's the perfect burger? Even a few years ago, people laughed at the idea of using biotechnology to create animal-free meat products. But the idea has caught on, hugely, as the success of Beyond Meat or the Impossible Burger prove. Arvind and Poe were early backers of several trailblazers creating lab-grown meat or realistic meat and animal product substitutes. Clara Foods, for example, started out making eggless egg white meringues in a tiny IndieBio lab. The company is now valued at more than $125 million. The truth is, science and society have always moved forward hand in hand. Arvind casts his mind back to the early 16th century. The religious reforms that Martin Luther demanded changed society forever. Copernicus and his controversial astronomical observations ushered in a whole new era of science. There are differences between scientific and social change, though. Scientific change is gradual and even predictable. Right now, we know for sure we're making serious advances in artificial intelligence, genetics, and so on. But societal change is much harder to foresee. Who could have predicted that Martin Luther would walk down to that church in Wittenberg and nail his demands to the door? Similarly, who knows what the consequences of artificial intelligence or developing work in genetics will be? All we know is things are going to change, and we need to get ready.
Blink 8 of 8.
Some futuristic ideas remain far off. Artificial intelligence, for one, is nowhere near close to human capabilities. The machines we're making have no way of acquiring something even a 4-year-old already has. Common sense. And how about the soul? Something's going on inside us that can't be explained through science. Get the world's top scientists to poke around inside a human brain. Would they find the soul? No chance. But it's there. It's in what we do, and what we choose to do.
The key message here is our choices today will affect our health and the health of our planet.
We all have choices to make that will impact our planet and our bodies. These two issues are more closely related than we think. Perhaps, in the same way that the Green New Deal sets out a new plan for the planet, we need an equivalent New Deal for our bodies. For instance, we need to stop polluting ourselves with sugar in the same way that we need to stop polluting the planet with carbon emissions. Or take our dependency on microbes. There's a symbiotic relationship between plants and fungi called ectomycorrhizae, which naturally sequesters carbon into the soil. The innumerable and various microorganisms living inside us are similarly vital to our health, and we're only just beginning to understand why. Here's one more similarity between planetary and individual health. Both are dependent on core temperature. Imagine your own temperature rising 2 degrees. You'd notice and be worried. The response should be exactly the same with regard to our planet. These are reasons why it's so vital we make good choices today. Thanks to science, we're learning more about what we are and what we're capable of. But what we do with that information is entirely up to us.
You've just listened to our blinks to Decoding the World by Poe Bronson and Arvind Gupta.
The key message in these blinks is that, through their venture capital firm IndieBio, close friends Arvind Gupta and Poe Bronson are helping biotechnology startups expand and accelerate their work. They're motivated by the desire to tackle the very biggest problems facing the world, from COVID and cancer to climate change. Many of these remarkable and innovative projects might just lead to real progress and a brighter future.
Got feedback? We would love to hear what you think about our content. Just drop an email to remember@blinkist.com with Decoding the World as the subject line and share your thoughts.